Welcome back. I have got such a special show for you today. I'm here with my good friend, Nick Ortner. That guy right there, I'm going to tell you about him in a second. He is an expert at emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping. He's also the producer of the Tapping Solution film, amazing film, and the author of the forthcoming book, The Tapping Solution. Welcome to Woodstock, New York.
Why, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, Nick.
It's a pleasure.
So you know that I love tapping. If you don't know, I've been using emotional freedom technique myself and also for my coaching, and it is just absolutely profound. Maybe, Nick, you could tell us a little bit about it for people who don't know.
We're like, oh, we're tap dancing. They probably think you're tap dancing, you know?
Exactly.
So tapping, or EFT, emotional freedom technique, it's called tapping because we're literally tapping on these meridian points of our body while saying certain statements. It's kind of a combination of ancient Chinese acupressure. That's the tapping side. You know, acupressure, acupuncture, the whole meridian system from the East, and then modern psychology. That's the verbal affirmations, the things that we're focusing on. So it's this strange combination that somehow comes together for a magical result. As you've experienced, and I've spent the last 10 years of my life experiencing personally with friends and families and seeing really thousands or hundreds of thousands of people around the world get amazing results with this tapping technique.
One of the things that I love about it is you shift really quickly. So we're going to get into it in a minute, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how I came to it. I had heard about tapping. It was in the air, you know, it was really popular. Everybody was talking about it. I didn't know what it was. And so you had this conference a few years back. I saw hundreds of people talking about what was going on in their lives. And even though they were tapping on things that had nothing to do with me, I was having these profound shifts in the audience. And I was watching people literally overcome challenges and traumas and dramas that they had been lugging around for years.
Yeah. And it's that point of overcoming things and changing. You know, I think most of us recognize if you follow Kris's stuff, if you're in this world, you know that there's things you want to change, right? Like there's a population of the world who's just doing their thing. This population is about change, right? We want to change. And the struggle is, how do we change? And why is it that we know something, we know we want something, we know we want to lose weight or, you know, stop eating sugar or overcome our financial challenges and our stress around finances and our stress about standing out in our world, but we can't do it.
So what you're talking about is creating new habits.
Yeah.
And literally breaking habits by using tapping and basically, oh gosh, we store this stuff in our bodies.
Yeah. When we're doing this tapping, we're actually sending a signal to the amygdala. Right? The amygdala is that fight or flight response center in the brain. And that's the response center that when something is bothering you, when you see that piece of chocolate and you need it, and it goes beyond just the chocolate, it's the stress and the anxiety, or you have a phobia if you're scared of heights.
Right,
you know, you and I have worked on fear of heights together, where your whole physical response is something that's conditioned so deep that you can't get to it any other way. You're paralyzed, absolutely. So what the tapping does is it really runs the gamut from the small daily stresses, and we can do the tapping to just calm down our body, to those deepest traumas.
Right. Why don't we start showing people some tapping? Because we're talking about it and I really want them to experience it. So show us the points and let's begin.
Absolutely. So we're going to do the same process no matter what the issue is, which is one of the great things about tapping. You know, first you'll try to figure out the points, but once you know the points, no matter what you're faced with, you're going to go through the same process, right? So the process is this: identify a target, right? So for this scenario, we'll just talk about general stress or anxiety. Okay, so think about something in your life that you're a little stressed out about or a little anxious about. And I'm sure we can all come up with something, even if it's just a looming deadline, you know, it can be that, or it can be deeper anxiety. So, you know, really stressed about finances, or you're anxious when you think about your body, your weight, whatever's going on. So pick that issue and then really feel it in your body. A lot of times we tend to think about things in our head, you know, like, oh, this is coming up. Feel it in your body. What do you feel when that issue comes up, right? And then give it a number on a 0 to 10 scale. 10 being, I'm so anxious, like that's paralyzing anxiety.
I want to get out of my body, the house is on fire, this is excruciating.
Exactly, that's 10. And, you know, 0 is nothing. Try to pick an issue that where you're at 5 or higher. You know, if you're at a 2, it's kind of like hard to see the shift. So pick the issue, and now we're going to do some tapping on it, okay? So starting by tapping on the side of the hand, the karate chop point, and just repeat after me. I'm going to say it, and then Kris is going to be my echo, if you would. So tapping the side of the hand. Even though I have this anxiety,
Even though I have this anxiety,
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I have this anxiety,
Even though I have this anxiety,
I deeply and completely accept
I
myself.
deeply and completely accept myself.
And one more time. We always do it 3 times to start off. Even though I have this anxiety,
Even though I have this anxiety,
I deeply and completely accept
I
myself.
deeply and completely accept myself.
So that's really bringing the issue forward,
Yes.
right? And what I love about that setup statement is that we're acknowledging the problem. I have this anxiety, and then we're saying along with it, I accept myself, right?
And let's just press pause here
Yeah.
for a second. For folks who are not ready to say I
Yeah.
accept myself, it took me 10 years to accept cancer.
Yeah.
So if I was starting to tap on cancer 10 years ago,
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm not ready for that,
Yeah.
Nick. What can they do if they're open to the concept but not quite there yet?
Yeah. So you can do the same tapping, even though I have this anxiety, even though whatever's going on, I choose to let it go, or I accept part of myself with it. Sometimes just because most of us accept a little bit of
Right.
ourselves, but not ourselves fully. So you can play with the language to what
open
feels
to
good.
accepting myself in
And
the
if you can't
future.
even go there, just go through the rest of the
Right,
points
okay.
until you find some more peace. Right?
Okay, so now
that's
what?
a setup statement. So now we go through the points. The first point is the eyebrow point. Inside of the eyebrow, one side or the other, or with both. And we just repeat the same issue. So in this case, we might just say this anxiety.
This anxiety.
Now, side of the eye, it's not at the temple, not at the eye, right on the bone. Again, one side or the other. It doesn't matter what hand you use. This anxiety.
This anxiety.
Now, under the eye, right on the bone, this anxiety.
This anxiety.
Under the nose, all the stress and anxiety.
All the stress and anxiety.
Under the mouth, all the stress and anxiety in my body.
All the stress and anxiety in my body.
Collarbone, you feel for the 2 little bones of the collarbone. You go down an inch and just out to each side about an inch.
Here am
And
I.
tap with both hands, all the stress and anxiety.
All the stress and anxiety.
2 more points left. Under the arm, all the stress and anxiety.
All the stress and anxiety.
And then last point, right at the top of the head, all the stress and anxiety.
All the stress and anxiety.
And then we take a deep breath. And we let it go. So now we tune in. We go back to that same issue and say, well, what shifted there? And there's a couple things that can happen. Let's say you had an anxiety at 8 about an upcoming project. You do some tapping and you go, whoa, it's a 5 now. You know, I can tell I have that space to breathe a little more. So you can keep tapping on, even though I have this anxiety, and just continue to do those rounds.
Until you feel less and less potent anxiety.
Exactly. The best results with tapping, we're doing very general tapping, but the best results are when you get really specific, right? So if you have a fear of heights, it's not just tapping on the fear of heights, it's tapping on how you feel in your body. What's the memory you had when, well, I was 10 years old and I went up to a building and I just didn't know what I was going to see and I got so scared.
Right.
Fear of flying, people use it a lot for fear of flying. What was the event that happened, or what scares you most? I hate the landing, I hate the takeoff, I hate that part of it. With weight and body issues, it's what specifically is happening for you. You know, you can do the general tapping to bring the stress down, but to really retrain the brain and the limbic system, we want to get to your nugget. You know,
Right.
when you and I tap together, that process is getting to what's the thing right there.
There are tears, there is snot, and we usually tap for like 45 minutes to
Yeah.
an hour. And I've shared some of my deepest, darkest, nasty points with Nick because I totally trust him. And it's been amazing to see the transformations in my life. That's why I wanted to bring this to you. That's why this is a longer interview. And I really wanted you to hear about what Nick does. Now, at some point you bring, I might be tapping about anxiety and I'm going to tell them a quick little story about anxiety in a moment, but you bring it to the positive.
Yeah.
Right? So what is that like?
Yeah, so people often struggle with why are we focusing on the negative first. Now, I like to reframe it a little bit and call it the truth. Because it's not, forget negative or not, it's what you're feeling right now.
honest
You know,
truth.
it's the honest truth.
Yeah.
And we have a tendency, we want to think better thoughts, and that's absolutely the perfect thing to do, but not at the cost of burying our feelings down below, right? If your anxiety is an 8 and you do a couple rounds of tapping and now it's at a 4, and now you start saying, I choose to feel safe now, and it feels
I'm
right.
letting this go.
I mean, have you ever done affirmations
Yeah.
when you're like, they're not sinking in and you're like,
They feel like accessories. They feel like I've just glued them onto
That's
a
it.
pile of shit.
that's it, and they don't fit,
Yeah.
they're not landing because they're not how you feel. So
Right.
you want to do the tapping on the negative or the truth enough that you find that space to then affirm. And then that's a place where you lock in that positive.
A lot of you don't know this, and it's something that I struggle with still. I have had anxiety and fear around public speaking my whole life. And
Surprise, surprise. I mean, look at...
And it was terrifying for me. And I do a lot of big keynotes. You'll see me at many I Can Do It this year. And know that before I get on stage, I'm tapping. But it used to put me in the fetal position. Yeah. And it was to the point where, though I love meeting you all out on the road, it was riddling my body with stress. And one of the things that I love about this work is, I believe in reducing the amount of inflammation in our lives. And inflammation comes from what we're eating, what we're drinking, and what we're thinking. And this is a way to really bring down the fire around, the stress response, around your pain, your drama, your trauma. And so I've used it for my speaking anxiety. And it's been amazing when I start to go to the positive.
Yeah.
It'll start with that. Even though I'm terrified I'm about to give this talk, I have no idea what I'm saying. Even though I don't feel worthy, even though I feel like I have nothing else to give and to show, and I have no business being on that stage, I love and accept myself anyway. Yeah. And I really have that conversation with myself and go, what you've taught me to do is like, I have no business to be there. Yeah. That's what I feel.
That's how you feel.
And until I finally get to, what if that's exactly where I'm supposed to be?
And isn't that shift? I mean, I love the shift. I never get bored of the shift. It always astounds me when you have that negative thought, I don't deserve to be there, I'm not enough, and you do the tapping, and then you don't have to make up the next positive affirmation. It just comes forward. You're like, I have every right to be on this stage, and I have so much to say and so much to give. When we really handle the stress in our lives, when we handle those fears, those patterns, those limiting beliefs, a lot that come from childhood and a lot of experiences, when we clear those out, there's this new energy that springs forward. And to me, it's the most beautiful part of this whole process, is seeing that dramatic shift.
And then I get on that stage and I crush it, and I get off the stage and I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I have this. So that's just a little taste. You can use this for so many different things in your life, as we've been talking about. Nick, you've got an awesome tapping summit coming up. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And you have all the details below, but I want you to know about this free summit that's about to take place.
Absolutely. So really briefly, this is the 5th year that we've done this. There's been over 500,000 people that have attended over the last couple of years. 1 year, 300,000 people. So this isn't just me and you weirdos in the kitchen talking about it. There's hundreds of thousands of people around the world, including doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists and peak performance coaches and athletes, and people are using this tool. So we're coming together for 10 days. It's a free event, 2 presentations per day. And basically you just put in your name and email, and every day for 10 days, you get 2 amazing presentations on pain relief, on weight loss, on finances, on relationship trouble, whatever's going on in your life, it's addressed somewhere in the summit. You can tap along with people, and it's really an astounding event and experience. So I hope you'll join us.
Yeah, I'm so glad you put that on. Again, all the information is below. And how has that resonated with you? I mean, have you tried tapping before? Is it something that you're into? What has this experience watching the video been like? We'd love to, read your comments in the comments below. And I just want to say thanks, Nick.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming to Woodstock.
It's always a pleasure.
The vibration in Woodstock changes when Nick comes to town. I just want you to know that. So we're happy in Hippieville.